Elias Trent had exactly 3 seconds to process the fact that he was floating upward through the roof of his apartment before everything went insane. In the first second, he realized his screaming was louder than the glowing beams swallowing him. In the second, he became aware that he was clutching a half-eaten bagel like it was a holy relic. And in the third and most terrifying second, he noticed the faces staring down at him from above. Enormous reptilian eyes widened in horror, as if they had accidentally summoned a toddler to defuse a nuclear bomb. The only thing more shocking than being abducted was the way the aliens looked at him, as though the mere sight of him foretold cosmic catastrophe. Elias screamed louder. The aliens screamed louder. The universe, for a fragile moment, held its breath. Then everything went black. When Elias blinked awake, he stood in an impossibly polished metallic chamber shaped like a sphere sliced clean by laser precision. Towering figures circled him, each wearing armor that shimmered like molten chrome. Their helmets were off, revealing scaled foreheads and sharp jaws. They were terrifying and majestic in the way opera singers are majestic. You admired them, but you also did not want them screaming directly in your face. None of them spoke at first. They just stared at Elias with expressions of deep, unsettling disappointment, like teachers discovering a student who clearly cheated on an exam yet still managed to fail it. Elias cleared his throat. His voice came out in a thin squeak. "Is this human resources?" The aliens exchanged glances. The tallest of them stepped forward, his heavy cloak dragging dramatically behind him, though the effect was ruined by the expression of absolute regret on his face. "I am Admiral Zyrak of the 7th Dominion. We summoned Earth's champion." His voice trembled as he continued. "We expected the warrior prime. The conqueror of centuries. The blood sage of Nova Helion." Elias blinked very slowly. "I think you might have the wrong guy. I am a data entry clerk. My fiercest battle is with spreadsheets that refuse to format." A collective gasp echoed around the chamber. A few aliens clutched their chests. One fainted. Admiral Zyrak rubbed the sides of his skull as though massaging away a migraine the size of a black hole. "Impossible. The summoning protocols draw only the most powerful combatants from each world. You were chosen by destiny. Or worse, by paperwork." Elias raised the bagel still in his hand. "Does destiny like sesame seeds?" Zyrak ignored the comment and gestured. A floating holographic screen appeared in midair, scrolling through Elias Trent Dossier with glowing text. At first, Elias thought maybe the dossier had confused him with someone important. But no. The first line read Cabinet 47, Human Resource Storage, Designation Clerk Level 2. The next line read Notable Skill, Tenacity in Filing System Maintenance. Then, a particularly unflattering note scrolled across. Exhibits unpredictable behavior under caffeine influence. Zyrak made a noise like a dying engine. He turned to his officers. "You fools. You absolute imbeciles. You summoned a bureaucrat. The ritual cannot be undone. He is bonded to the command registry. We are stuck with him." Elias felt mildly offended. "I am actually very competent at my job. And I have only cried at work 3 times this month." A murmur swept through the room. The aliens whispered among themselves in a panic. One declared that the galaxy was doomed. Another suggested quietly that perhaps they could simply throw Elias out the nearest airlock and try again. Elias heard that one. "Hey! I am right here. Also, please don't throw me out of anything. I get motion sickness in elevators." Before Zyrak could respond, the ship trembled violently. Red lights flared across the chamber. Sirens blared with a piercing rhythm that made Elias instantly nostalgic for fire drills in middle school. A metallic voice announced that a system override was detected in the primary command deck. Zyrak spun toward his officers. Who dared to engage command protocols? A smaller alien pointed a trembling claw toward Elias. He touched the interface. Elias looked down and realized his hand had indeed landed on a glowing panel built into the floor. He had not touched it intentionally. He had simply stumbled back in panic, slipped on something that looked suspiciously like alien drool, and smacked his palm flat on the console. The holographic displays flickered in response as dozens of command streams executed simultaneously at impossible speed. Zyrak stared at him in horror. "What have you done?" "I don't know," Elias shouted. "I don't even know what I touched. I am bad with technology. Once I deleted my entire company database by sneezing." The console chimed in a polite tone. "Galactic Fleet Automatic Combat Strategy Simulation activated. Level designation, Omega Ultra Kill Sequence. Deploying war algorithms." The chamber erupted in chaos. Officers ran. Systems rebooted. Weapons platforms locked onto empty air as defensive drones powered online. Zyrak grabbed his head again, looking moments away from throwing himself into a star. He triggered the war engine. Only a grand strategist can access those protocols. This must be a demonstration of power. A calculated performance of incompetence to disguise lethal intelligence. Elias opened and closed his mouth like a goldfish having an existential crisis. I tripped. The ship lurched as the war system sent the vessel into a combat stance. Turrets rotated. Shields flared like a cosmic sunrise. Across the galaxy, fleets detected the activation of a class-forbidden battle routine. They assumed the Seventh Dominion had unleashed their secret weapon. They assumed Elias. The bagel fell out of Elias' frantic grip and bounced twice on the floor with a sad squish. Zyrak knelt before him. "Great human champion Elias Trent, master of chaos strategy, please teach us your methods." Elias wanted to scream. He wanted to go home. But instead, he said the only thing that made sense in that moment. "Can someone please tell me where the bathroom is before I destroy anything else on accident?" Silence filled the chamber, heavy and terrified. Somewhere far beyond the ship, the galaxy braced itself for the arrival of the most dangerous being it had ever misinterpreted. Elias Trent never imagined he would be escorted anywhere by a squad of hulking alien soldiers, especially not while still wearing his mismatched socks and office slippers. Yet here he was, shuffling awkwardly down a corridor of polished obsidian metal as though being marched to either his execution or an extremely stressful performance review. The aliens flanked him with tense posture, each one visibly sweating scales, which Elias had not realized was a thing. Admiral Zyrak led the procession, muttering under his breath about destiny, cosmic omens, and whatever a battle-tier anomaly was. Elias walked quietly behind him, trying not to make any sudden movements or touch anything that looked important. Given his track record so far, anything he touched might trigger another galaxy-wide crisis. The first destination was what Zyrak called the interrogation chamber. Elias braced himself for torture devices, sharp needles, memory extraction lasers, the works. Instead, he was seated in a surprisingly comfortable chair that automatically adjusted to the shape of his spine with a soft hum. An alien placed a cup of something steaming in front of him. Elias sniffed it cautiously. It smelled like citrus mixed with printer ink. "We will now begin strategic extraction," Zyrak announced while pacing in slow circles. His voice was grim, but Elias could tell underneath there was trembling anxiety. "Tell us your methods, Elias Trent. Unveil the psychology that guides your conquest techniques." Elias took a sip of the weird drink. It tasted like warm sadness with a hint of lemon. "I do not have conquest techniques. I work in an office. Last week I won Employee of the Month because everyone else called in sick." The alien officers exchanged horror-struck looks as if Elias had just casually admitted to destroying a moon for exercise. Zyrak leaned closer. "You are masking your brilliance. We know this tactic. Feigned incompetence to disarm the enemy. Very devious." "It is not devious," Elias insisted. "I really am incompetent. Ask my boss." But Zyrak was already pacing again, nodding to himself. "This must be a form of psychological warfare. The enemy lowers its guard, believing you harmless. Then, at the critical moment you strike. Ingenious." Elias opened his mouth, then closed it. There was no point arguing. These aliens had built a narrative around him, and no amount of self-deprecating honesty could fight it. Another alien stepped forward carrying a glowing cube. It hovered inches above his hand. displaying combat analysis projections. Observe. The cube expanded into a hologram of Elias himself battling monstrous creatures across star systems. Elias stared in horror as the hologram version of him executed moves he could barely comprehend, flipping through the air while wielding a glowing staff. Why am I doing that? That is not me. I cannot even do a cartwheel. The projections evolved rapidly, showing Elias leading star fleets, bending reality, and defeating colossal war machines simply by blinking. The aliens nodded solemnly at each simulation. We fed your documented physical deficiencies into the combat algorithm, Zyrak explained. The computer interpreted your weaknesses as intentional techniques meant to confound opponents. It predicts that your unpredictability grants you infinite possibility. Elias groaned softly into his hands. I am not unpredictable. I am just clumsy. Precisely, Zyrak replied with absolute certainty. Such chaotic energy cannot be trained. It is innate. The interrogation continued for hours. The aliens asked questions about human battle strategy, but Elias kept answering honestly. What is your philosophy in confrontation? They asked. Elias replied, I walk away quickly and pretend I did not hear them. What is your preferred weapon? Elias hesitated and admitted he once bought a foam sword from a Halloween store. At each answer, the aliens scribbled frantic notes, interpreting everything as deep metaphor. Walking away was labeled strategic disengagement. Foam sword expertise was categorized under unconventional weapon mastery. By the end of the session, Elias felt drained, confused, and mildly violated. The aliens, however, were exhilarated. They believed they had unlocked the mind of a tactical god. And that was the last thing Elias needed right now. Later, the aliens brought him to a room they called the training arena. It was a massive chamber filled with mechanical obstacles, floating drones, robotic enemies, and glowing platforms that rose and fell in unpredictable patterns. Elias stood at the entrance, horrified. He did not want to train. He wanted to curl up with a blanket and pretend none of this was happening. Zyrak clapped his clawed hands. Begin trial sequence for the human champion. The platform beneath Elias moved unexpectedly. Elias squeaked and stumbled forward. The drones activated around him, projecting harmless beams of light meant to simulate enemy attacks. Elias panicked. In attempting to dodge the lights, he flailed wildly, slipped on a metallic panel, and accidentally somersaulted into a control lever. The lever flipped. Alarms blared. The drones malfunctioned and started firing beams in random directions. Elias dove behind a crate to avoid them, but the crate had wheels and rolled across the room, slamming into a tower of equipment. The equipment toppled forward like dominoes, crashing down on the drones and shutting them off. Silence fell. The aliens watching from the balcony stared down in awe as Elias lay sprawled on the ground gasping for breath. Zyrak spoke first. Extraordinary. He neutralized the entire drone squad in 7 seconds. I fell. Elia wheezed. That was not intentional. This is beyond intentional. It is instinct. Zyrak turned to his officers, his voice cracked with reverence. His movements transcend prediction models. He has mastered the art of weaponizing chaos. Elias briefly considered fainting but decided he did not have enough emotional energy left to commit fully to it. The worst came moments later when the ship received a transmission from a nearby sector. The warlord clans had detected the activation of the war algorithms earlier in the day. Now, with the training arena readings added, they drew a terrifying conclusion. A universal bounty was placed on Elias. Every major faction believed that a new superweapon had awakened, one capable of altering the fate of entire systems with a single slip of the foot. Elias Trent, Legend-class threat. Destroy on sight. The aliens turned to Elias with expressions of raw terror and awe. Zyrak swallowed hard. The galaxy fears you now. You have become the most wanted being alive. Elias buried his face in his hands. I just want to go back to my office. Zyrak bowed deeply. And that, great champion, is exactly why they fear you. Elias Trent had never imagined that the phrase "the galaxy is afraid of you" would become part of his daily vocabulary, Yet here he was being ushered into what Admiral Zyrak dramatically called the Chamber of Galactic Deliberation. The chamber was a circular arena suspended in zero gravity, where glowing thrones floated like oversized fireflies. Each throne held a member of the Council of Eight, the governing body of the known universe. Elias stood in the center on a levitating platform, hands fidgeting nervously, wishing desperately that he could melt into the floor or at least find some coffee strong enough to knock him unconscious. His presence alone seemed to cause chaos. Several council members whispered frantically while others recorded his every breath as though it were prophecy. The tension was so thick Elias felt like he could spread it on toast. Admiral Zyrak stepped forward and cleared his throat. Presenting the human champion, Elias Trent, he declared. His voice carried the tone of someone introducing a celebrity he feared deeply and respected reluctantly. Elias considered waving, but the last time he waved on this ship, he nearly hit a self-destruct panel. So instead he gave an awkward nod that caused two council members to gasp as if he had just launched an invasion fleet. The first counselor, a gelatinous being shaped like a shimmering translucent pillar, leaned forward. It spoke with a voice like water moving through pipes. Is this the one who triggered the Omega Ultra kill sequence through mere touch? Elias swallowed hard. I tripped. The council chamber erupted into chaotic murmuring. One counselor exclaimed that tripping implied mastery over gravitational defiance. Another insisted it must be a form of psychological intimidation. Zyrak pinched the bridge of his nose, though Elias had no idea how aliens with scale-plated brows even accomplished that gesture. The floating thrones circled slowly as Counselor Drythe, a creature whose fur changed colors depending on mood, addressed them all. This human appears harmless. But harmless is often the most dangerous state. The universe has a history of underestimating such anomalies. Elias felt slightly offended. I am standing right here. And I really am harmless. My biggest crime is microwaving fish at work. Gasps filled the chamber. Zyrak whispered, such bold disregard for social harmony, a true warrior spirit. Elias shut his eyes. It was clear nothing he said would help his case. Halfway through the chaotic debate, the council declared that Elias would act as Earth's representative on interstellar diplomatic matters until they determined whether to destroy or protect the planet. Elias almost choked on his own breath. I cannot be a diplomat. I once caused an international incident by accidentally liking a coworker's vacation photo from 3 years ago. The council members exchanged intrigued looks as if Elias had confessed to inventing a new negotiation strategy. Zyrak guided him out of the chamber before Elias could further damage intergalactic relations. The next planet they visited was Bureaucratus 6, a world run entirely by bureaucrats. Zyrak explained that resolving a centuries-old dispute on the planet would prove Elias' diplomatic value. Elias already felt faint. The planet itself looked like a massive filing cabinet from space, each continent shaped like overlapping drawers. Upon landing, Elias and Zyrak were greeted by a line of beings holding clipboards, each one emitting an aura of exhaustion and despair. They informed Zyrak that appointments were required 37 years in advance. Zyrak turned to Elias with a defeated sigh. This is hopeless. Their conflict has persisted for generations. They cannot agree on who has the right to process the galaxy migration forms. Elias rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. At his office, arguments were usually solved by assigning someone else to deal with the problem. But this was an entire planet paralyzed by paperwork. Elias approached the two leaders, who were arguing fiercely about which department deserved authority. Their voices rose in pitch and tension until Elias felt a headache forming behind his eyes. Excuse me, Elias said softly, releasing a tone he usually saved for calming panicked interns. Why don't you just create a waiting line? Both leaders froze. They glanced at each other. They glanced at Elias. Then back at each other. A line, one asked? A structured sequence of individuals or units awaiting service, the other clarified. Yes, Elias said. Whoever arrives first gets processed first. Whoever arrives next waits their turn. A hush fell over the entire square. Bureaucrats stared as though Elias had just parted the sea with a stapler. One leader fell to his knees, trembling. He has solved the great conflict. The prophecy speaks true. Order through simplicity. The planet erupted in celebration. Fireworks burst overhead shaped like spinning forms and glowing pens. Zyrak stared at Elias with an awe that bordered on religious devotion. Elias, meanwhile, felt like he was dreaming the weirdest fever dream of his life. But the celebration did not last. As they returned to the ship, Zyrak received a distress signal from the fleet prison's satellite. A dangerous prisoner had escaped. The transmission came through distorted and crackling. He knows Elias is aboard your ship. He will reveal the truth about the human. You must be cautious. Elias stiffened. Truth? What truth? I do not even know any secrets. Zyrak shook his head grimly. There are whispers that your dossier contains a hidden annex. Classified beyond my clearance. Only the High Dominion Archive can access it. Elias groaned. You are telling me my job performance review has secret levels? Before Zyrak could respond, alarms blared. A shadowy projection flickered on the screen. A humanoid figure shrouded in darkness laughed ominously. So the so-called champion wanders freely. The universe misunderstands his nature. When I reveal it, chaos will swallow you all. The screen faded out. Elias stood frozen in fear. He had no idea who the prisoner was or why they thought Elias had some dark secret. He felt the walls closing in. Zyrak placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. Whoever this being is, they clearly know something important about you. We must uncover the hidden truth in your records. Elias blinked in disbelief. I do not want hidden truths. I want a day without nearly causing intergalactic panic. Zyrak nodded solemnly. And that, Elias Trent, is precisely why the universe trembles before you. The ship drifted through space, carrying with it a terrified human, a paranoid crew, and a mystery growing darker with every passing moment. Elias Trent was beginning to suspect that the universe had a personal vendetta against him. Just as he was starting to recover from the news that a mysterious escaped prisoner allegedly knew some terrifying truth about him, the ship shuddered with a force that nearly knocked him into a wall. The alarm klaxons wailed in a way that suggested immediate disaster rather than mild inconvenience. Admiral Zyrak stormed into the corridor with urgency radiating off him like heat. Elias, come with me. A challenger has arrived. Elias froze. Challenger sounded like a euphemism for someone who wanted to kill him. The crew pulled him along, leading him to a colossal chamber filled with rising platforms, flashing lights, and a suspended ring of glowing force fields. It resembled a cross between a gladiator arena and a laser tag arena designed by someone with unlimited funding and no understanding of safety regulations. At the center of the arena stood a figure twice the size of any alien Elias had met yet. His armor was scarred, dented, and painted with symbols that looked suspiciously like tally marks. His forearms rippled with muscle. His eyes glowed with a burning crimson intensity that made Elias want to curl into a ball. This was Varkun the Cleaver, the galaxy-renowned warlord, conqueror of 12 star systems, and undefeated champion of the Titan Colosseum. Elias had read none of that, of course. Zyrak whispered it frantically into his ear as Elias stared at the giant warrior with absolute dread. Varkun stomped forward, each step sending tremors through the arena floor. So this is the human. The destroyer of fleets. The Chaos Master. The being who brought the Dominion to its knees with a single accidental activation of the Omega Ultra kill sequence. Elias raised both hands in panic. That was not me. I mean, it was me technically, but it was an accident. Varkun let out a booming laugh that echoed off the metal walls. Modesty even in power. A dangerous trait. Your legend grows stronger with every word. Zyrak leaned down to whisper intensely. You must accept the challenge. Declining will be seen as an act of war. Elias blinked rapidly. I can't fight him. I once sprained my wrist trying to open a jar of pickles. Zyrak placed a hand on his shoulder with solemn gravity. Your unpredictability is your weapon. Elias wanted to cry. Instead, he shuffled nervously toward the center of the arena. A ceremonial gong echoed through the chamber, and the force fields locked into place. Varkun raised two of his arms, each holding a blade large enough to slice a spaceship in half. His other two arms cracked his knuckles menacingly. Elias whimpered softly. Before Varkun could charge, Elias tried one more desperate attempt. "Can we talk about this?" Varkun interpreted this as psychological manipulation and nodded with excitement. "He is trying to study my weaknesses." "Very well, human champion. Speak your strategies." Elias took a step back, which was a mistake. He tripped over something small and metallic resting behind him. His lunchbox. He must have been carrying it absent-mindedly earlier, before panic ripped it from his grasp. Now the small container tumbled forward, bouncing once, twice, then skidding across the arena floor. What happened next defied all common sense. The lunchbox clattered loudly, startling Varkun. He stepped backward instinctively, only to slip on the slick surface of the arena. His massive foot slammed onto a loose panel that Elias had loosened earlier when he stumbled through the chamber. The panel shot upward like a spring, launching Varkun into the air in a flailing tangle of limbs. Elias watched in horror as the warrior landed against a rotating pillar, which spun him around, flung him upward again, and sent him crashing into a set of suspended weights that toppled like dominoes. The chain reaction knocked loose an energy coil that burst with a blinding flash, wrapping around Varkun and binding his arms to his sides. Varkun lay on the ground, groaning. The entire arena fell silent. Elias stared, mouth open, unable to comprehend what had just happened. He had not moved intentionally. He had not even tried to fight. He had simply existed in the general vicinity of danger, and reality reacted catastrophically. For several long seconds, no one spoke. Then Varkun began to laugh. It was deep and thunderous, the laugh of someone discovering a new religion. He rolled onto his knees and bowed deeply before Elias. "I am defeated. Your technique is unparalleled. Only you could weaponize gravity itself against me." Elias sputtered. "Gravity did that. Not me." Varkun ignored him completely. "I swear my loyalty to you, human master of chaos. From this day forth I serve your will." Zyrak looked like he was about to faint, overwhelmed by both relief and the growing mythos surrounding Elias. The arena filled with cheers from the crew, many of whom now believed they had just witnessed a legendary display of combat genius. Elias, still trembling, was escorted out of the arena like a champion returning from glorious battle. He desperately wanted to explain the truth, but every attempt only deepened the alien's admiration. One soldier told him his strategy was elegant beyond comprehension. Another asked to be taught the technique of the falling box. Elias felt his stomach churn. Hours later, as Elias sat alone in his temporary quarters trying to comprehend the insanity of the day, the ship lights dimmed and the wall screen activated. Zyrak appeared on the display. "Elias, there has been a development." Elias groaned. He dreaded developments. They were never good. Zyrak continued. "Varkun has submitted himself to the Dominion. His surrender message is broadcasting galaxy-wide." Elias covered his face. "What does that mean?" Zyrak exhaled heavily. "It means every major faction believes you to be even more powerful than before. You have conquered the galaxy's greatest warrior without lifting a finger." Elias felt dizzy. "I did not conquer him. I tripped." Zyrak nodded solemnly. "And that, Elias, is the deepest fear of all. Your chaos cannot be predicted, controlled, or defended against. The more you deny it, the more they believe in it." Elias slid down the wall, hugging his knees. He felt like a walking disaster wrapped in human skin. Yet somehow the entire galaxy saw him as a cosmic juggernaut. The escaped prisoner, the hidden truth, Varkun now serving him, the rising rumors of his power, all of it swirled into a storm he could not escape. Outside his room, the ship continued its slow trek through space. But Elias Trent felt something shift, a subtle tightening in the air, as though the universe itself was preparing for what came next. And deep in his chest, dread curled like a cold fist, whispering that the worst was yet to come. Elias Trent sat in the briefing chamber, as if gravity itself had doubled, weighing on his shoulders with oppressive force. The room was dim except for the holographic projection spinning above the central console, displaying a pulsing red symbol that made every alien officer flinch whenever it flickered. Zyrak paced with the nervous energy of someone awaiting an asteroid impact. Varkin stood motionless behind Elias like a loyal but terrifying statue, his forearms crossed solemnly. The escaped prisoner's threat echoed in Elias' mind, unsettling him in a way nothing else had since being abducted. Someone out there knew a truth about him that he himself did not know. And Elias feared that the truth, given his track record, would somehow make everything worse. Zyrak finally halted and gestured toward the symbol. We have accessed a fragment of your hidden dossier. Only a fragment. The rest is still locked behind encryption protocols older than my species. Elias leaned forward, dread pooling in his stomach. Why would my file have encryption? There is nothing secret about me. I am painfully average. Zyrak stared at him as though the word average could crack open stars. That is precisely the concern. The dossier annex is labeled Hazard Potential Index. Elias winced. That sounded less like a file and more like a threat assessment. The hologram shifted, revealing the sealed pages. Words scrolled across the projection in harsh red text. Subject demonstrates catastrophic unpredictability. Likelihood of butterfly effect disasters extremely high. Avoid placing subject in any high-stakes environment. Elias choked on air. That is just rude. That sounds like my high school counselor wrote it. Varkin stepped forward, scanning the text with 4 narrowed eyes. This means you are a being whose smallest actions create universal consequences. Elias waved his hands frantically. No, no, no. That is not true. If I create chaos, it is accidental. Like spilling water near my laptop. I do not control anything. Which Zyrak muttered is what makes you so dangerous. Before Elias could argue further, the ship alarm blared again, but this time with a deeper, more ominous tone. The screen shifted to a live feed of a distant star system. At first, Elias thought it was a nebula. Then he realized it was something far worse. A massive machine of impossible design unfolded from the darkness, its tendrils stretching across space like glowing roots of metal. The colors pulsed in sequences that hurt Elias' eyes to look at. Zyrak clenched his jaw. The ancient machine. The extinction engine. Elias blinked. That name seems unnecessarily dramatic. It is older than 10,000 civilizations, Zyrak continued. It awakens only when it identifies a universal threat. Elias felt his stomach drop. Meaning what Varkin answered with grim reverence. It thinks you are the threat. Elias considered lying down on the floor and refusing to move until everything went away. The ship lurched forward as Zyrak barked orders. All units prepare for defensive maneuvers. Redirect shield power. Plot interception course. Varkin, escort the human. Elias yelped as Varkin lifted him effortlessly with 2 arms and ran down the corridor with surprising speed. Where are we going? Elias shouted. To the core chamber, Varkin rumbled. The machine is attuned to you. Its activation sequence resonates with your energy signature. Elias flailed. My energy signature is anxiety and unpaid parking tickets. They entered the core chamber, a room filled with swirling crystalline conduits pulsing with electric light. Panels hovered in the air, rotating slowly. At the center stood a platform radiating with a soft hum. Zyrak arrived moments later, breathless. The ancient machine is deploying its scanning nodes. It believes you are its catalyst. If it fully awakens, it will sterilize star systems. Elias felt faint. And I am the catalyst because I tripped on a console. Zyrak stared at him, eyes wide. The summoning ritual selected you. Your unpredictability terrifies even non-sentient systems. Elias wished he had never left his apartment. Suddenly the chamber plunged into darkness. A deep resonant voice filled the air, though it was not truly a voice but something older and mechanical. Designate chaotic element detected. Begin assimilation. Elias took an involuntary step backward. Assimilation sounded like a horrible medical procedure. A beam of shimmering energy shot from the platform toward Elias. He screamed and ducked behind Zyrak. The beam struck a floating panel instead, which immediately overloaded and exploded into a shower of sparks. Zyrak sighed. You must step onto the platform. The machine will continue escalating until it obtains direct contact. Elias pressed a hand to his face. Why does everything want direct contact with me? I am allergic to responsibility. Varkan nudged him forward. You must embrace your destiny. Elias wanted to embrace a pillow and hide under it forever. But the entire ship shook violently as the ancient machine launched a pulse wave that nearly split the main hull. Zyrak shouted. Now Elias bolted onto the platform before he could overthink it. The energy beams struck him instantly. Elias flinched, expecting pain, but instead he felt a strange tingling that reminded him of sticking his tongue to a battery as a kid. The chamber filled with projections, billions of data strings swirling around him. Images of collapsing stars, dying planets, and halted civilizations flickered before his eyes. Then words appeared directly in his mind. System malfunction. Subject unpredictable. Neural pattern inconsistent with threat models. Error. Elias blinked in confusion. Are you having trouble processing me? The mechanical voice hesitated, attempting interpretation. Elias had no idea what to do. He panicked. And when Elias panicked around technology, his instincts did what they always did. He slapped the interface. Hard. The entire chamber vibrated. The lights flickered. The projections glitched into static. Then, with a low electronic groan, the ancient machine dimmed. Power level decreasing. Shutdown initiated. Elias stared at his own hand in shock. Did I just fix it by hitting it? Varkan knelt reverently. Your mastery over the machine is absolute. Elias sputtered. I turned it off and on again. The machine rebooted, but instead of activating its extinction protocols, it projected a new sequence. A prophecy. A line of symbols translated automatically in midair. The champion of chaotic harmony shall bring balance to the fracturing stars. The universe shall bend not to power, but to unpredictability. Zyrak inhaled sharply. That description matches you. Elias nearly passed out. How does me being clumsy translate into prophecy? The machine continued. The champion resets the broken order. Before Elias could argue, the ship received dozens of incoming transmissions. Some factions declared their allegiance to the newly revealed champion. Others declared him a cosmic threat to be eliminated. War, it seemed, was forming like a storm cloud around his existence. Elias sat on the floor, head buried in his arms, whispering into the void. I just wanted a normal life. Zyrak knelt beside him. And yet the universe has chosen you to reshape it. Elias groaned softly, wishing desperately that the universe would pick someone else. But destiny, chaos, and misunderstanding had tangled together in ways no one could stop now. The final confrontation was coming, and Elias Trent, reluctant champion of chaos, was at its center whether he liked it or not. Elias Trent had never witnessed the galaxy preparing for war, but now he watched in numb horror as the ship displays filled with images of mobilizing fleets, flashing warnings, and declarations of allegiance or hostility from every corner of known space. Some hailed him as a savior chosen by ancient prophecy. Others vowed to erase him before he could reshape reality with his chaotic influence. Admiral Zyrak paced rapidly, his movements sharp with urgency as he tried to manage incoming transmissions that contradicted each other every second. Varkan knelt beside Elias in full warrior posture, refusing to leave his side. Elias sat on the floor with his hands locked behind his head, rocking slightly like a man trying to survive a panic attack in a room full of exploding starships. A message appeared on the main screen showing a hooded figure surrounded by flickering shadows. The factions of order will not submit to chaos, the figure declared. The human must be destroyed for balance to remain. Immediately another message overlapped it, this one from a crystalline species glowing with ethereal light. The champion must lead us into a new age, for only unpredictability can heal the fractured cosmos. More messages came through, each one escalating the tension. Within minutes the entire galaxy seemed ready to shatter. Elias groaned into his hands. Why is this happening? I am not a champion, or a destroyer. I am a man who alphabetizes his spice rack. Zyrak stopped pacing and knelt beside him. The prophecy has polarized the factions, he said. They believe your fate determines theirs. Elias shook his head violently. I do not want fate. I want a nap. But the war drums of the galaxy did not care about Elias' desires. The factions refusing to accept him had unified into a coalition of order, a stern group determined to destroy anything unpredictable. Meanwhile, the factions supporting him had formed the Concord of Chaos, believing Elias would usher in a new era where rigid structures would finally break. The two coalitions prepared to clash in a confrontation that would blanket entire star clusters in conflict. Zyrak turned sharply toward Elias. You must stop this, he said. Elias stared in disbelief. Me stop a galaxy-wide war? I cannot even stop myself from spilling coffee on my shirt. Zyrak placed a firm hand on his shoulder. The prophecy is clear. You are not chosen for strength, but for insight. Elias laughed hollowly. My insight is useless. I once got lost in my own apartment building. Zyrak ignored him. You are unpredictable. Your ideas cannot be anticipated, which gives you an advantage no faction possesses. Varkan rumbled in agreement. You alone can bridge order and chaos. Before Elias could protest further, the ship shook violently. They had entered the battlefield. Two massive armadas hovered across from each other, stretching across space like vast metal continents bristling with weapons. The coalition of order ships were strict geometric shapes, sharp and angular. The Concord of Chaos ships writhed with organic curves and shifting colors. Both sides waited tensely for the first move. Zyrak dragged Elias to the communication deck. The entire galaxy is watching. You must speak. Elias shook uncontrollably. I do not know what to say. Varkan knelt and bowed his head. Speak from your heart. Elias nearly fainted. My heart is currently screaming. Still, he found himself pushed forward onto a platform where a hovering sphere projected his face in gigantic form across both fleets. Elias winced as he saw his own terrified expression spread across the cosmos. The fleets murmured. Weapons hummed. One wrong word could start a war. Elias inhaled shakily. Hi. Hello everyone. This is Elias. Your champion. I guess. He could feel Varkan and Zyrak flinch behind him. So. I think there has been a misunderstanding. A giant misunderstanding. The biggest one in the history of misunderstandings. Across the fleets, commanders stared. Soldiers paused. Some lowered their weapons in confusion. Elias continued. I am not a powerful warrior. I did not defeat Varkan on purpose. I tripped. Twice. Maybe 3 times. And the ancient machine thing, I slapped it because I panic around technology. That was not skill. That was fear. The fleets exchanged bewildered glances. This was not the speech of a cosmic conqueror. Elias swallowed hard. Look, I know everyone thinks chaos is dangerous. And it is. Trust me. I know better than anyone how dangerous clumsiness can be. But order can be dangerous too. You get so focused on control that you forget how to understand each other. And chaos gets so wild it forgets how to care. Maybe the real problem is that you are both so afraid of each other that you forgot you actually need each other. Silence fell across the battlefield. Elias pressed on, surprising even himself. Order without flexibility becomes tyranny. Chaos without direction becomes destruction. But together they become balance. That is it. That is the whole point. You do not need a champion to decide your future. You need each other. And you need to stop trying to kill me. I cannot handle that kind of pressure. For a long moment, nothing happened. Elias braced himself for laser fire. But instead, a single ship lowered its weapons. Then another. Then a dozen. The fleets slowly powered down their cannons until the battlefield became still, quiet, almost peaceful. The galaxy had heard him. The coalition of order commander stepped forward in a hologram. You speak truth, human. Perhaps we have misinterpreted the prophecy. The Concord of Chaos leader nodded. Balance cannot be forced. It must be chosen. Zyrak exhaled with relief. Elias sagged like a deflated balloon. The war had been averted. Hours later, a treaty was formed. A structured yet flexible accord combining both the stability of order and the creativity of chaos. Rules, but adaptable ones. Protocols, but with room for improvisation. Elias had created something impossible. Agreement between natural opposites. After the treaty was signed, Zyrak approached Elias with a solemn bow. You have reshaped the galaxy. Elias managed a tired laugh. Can I go home now? Zyrak nodded. You have earned your peace. The ship activated the return sequence. Elias blinked as reality folded around him. When he opened his eyes, he was standing in his apartment, holding a cold half-eaten bagel. Only seconds had passed on Earth. His slippers were still on. Elias stared at the bagel. Then at his hands. Then at the ceiling. He whispered softly, "Never again." He returned to work the next morning. Everything felt oddly normal, except for the tiny sprite-sized alien sitting on his desk wearing a miniature suit. It looked up at him with hopeful eyes. "Human champion," it said shyly, "I require advice. How do I confess my feelings to my coworker?" Elias sighed deeply, sinking into his chair. The galaxy, it seemed, was not quite done with him yet.